All right. Good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it might be. Um, Today we're going to start chapter one, section 1 1. Chapter one's kind of a weird chapter. It's only two sections long. It's kind of an introduction to the idea of what statistics can do for you. It's really informal, but it's a nice little introduction to what we're going kind of stuff we're going to do in this class. So before I start the lesson, you need to do something for me. I need you to have read pages 4 and 5 in your textbook. It's pretty important that you at least look at that, read it. There's some text on page 4, and then there's a little chart on page 5. Read that real quick, and come back and join me, and then I'll go on with the lesson. All right. Hopefully, you read that. Hopefully, there was a pause there. I'm going to just give you a couple words and things that are important here, and then talk a little bit about the idea of the section. So what you just read was a real life case where a company went through a lot of layoffs, legal layoffs. They were losing money, so they needed to lay off people. And legally, there are some rules that companies have to follow when they do that. So I'm not going to bore you and make this video too long with all those rules. But the basic idea is they can't use age as a factor for laying off. They have to use other factors. So after the company did all these layoffs, the employees said, whoa, time out. You clearly made some decisions here based on age, nothing else. The company said, no, we didn't use age. To simplify things for this chapter, we're going to say the company just said it was random. Okay, it's not exactly what the company would do, but we're just going to say there's all kinds of problems you can have with randomness in terms of losing too many employees in one department, the better employees, the more paid ones or something. So we're not going to worry about those right now. We're just going to say they said their claim is they did it randomly. And then we're just going to look at the numbers and say, wow, do we really think this could have happened randomly or not? Or is there something else going on? That's kind of the basic idea here. And the chart in the book gives you, who they laid off, when they laid them off, what their salary, if they were salary, hourly, that sort of thing. So let me just give you some quick definitions here first on the iPad. So this is what's called a case study. This is the Westcavo age discrimination, just a couple little definitions. What we're doing is exploring right now. We're not doing any real serious math like we're going to learn how to do in this class. We're going to dig deeper. We'll be able to talk more about this way later in the class after we learn it. So right now it's very informal. It's just an exploration. It's an informal, open-ended examination of the data. And we're just going to look to see if we see patterns. Like, wow, do we really think this could be random? Because typically if something's random, you won't see patterns, things that fall nicely into place. It just doesn't happen when it's random. So that's kind of what we're doing here. You're going to hear this word inference in this class a lot. This class is actually called inferential statistics. Inference is just making an inference about whatever you're looking at. So for here, inferences, we're going to judge whether the patterns are what we would expect if it was random. Is it similar if it's random? Remember, their argument is, hey, we just pulled the names out of a hat. That's it. Had nothing to do with age or anything like that. And we're going to study and learn how to do simulations and things like that to really see if this could have happened randomly. You're going to hear the word cases. Cases are just the subjects of any statistical examination. In this particular problem, the cases are the employees of the company. And then the variable is whatever we're studying about those cases. It's the characteristics of the cases. And in this particular case study, that variable would be age, right? Because all we're concerned about is age. So what I'm going to do is just real quickly, most of this is just like you looking at things and what do you see and then explaining. So there's a lot of writing in this course. For this particular section, you would have to justify any kind of reasoning. So all you see here is what's called a very, very simple dot plot. We're going to do a lot of dot plots in this class. We're going to talk about how to do them. So this is a dot plot. And it's the dot plot of all of the hourly employees, no one else. So we just got to focus just on them for a second. And whenever you do any kind of chart or graph display in this class, you got to be really specific about what you put on it. So you see I have a scale down here, which is their age. Ignore this scale on the right. I mean, when I had a student do this, you don't have to ignore it, I guess, because it's just a dot plot. So you don't really need a scale on a dot plot. So he had trouble just getting rid of that scale. Each dot just represents one person. So we don't have a vertical scale. Other times we would. And then what you see is two different color dots. You see blue ones and red ones, right? So the blue ones are all of the people that got laid off, and the red ones are all the ones that did not get laid off. So the idea here is you would just look at this chart and say, what do you think? And remember, they said it was random. And there's really no right or wrong answer for a lot of these things. I mean, sometimes there kind of is, or at least you should be leaning one way. Because you can look at things like actual ages, you can look at things like average age, you could look at the number of a certain age laid off, you could look at a percent of certain age laid off. There's lots of different things you can study. Some are better than others, and we'll talk about that as we go through the class. So if this were me and I was looking at this, I'd say, well, here's what I see. Let's look at this chunk right here. Right? To me, that's a pretty important chunk. If their argument, we believe as employees that they're using age discrimination, they're saying, no, we just did it randomly. And said, well, okay, look, if you did it randomly, you got, let me do a little count here. I'll change the color for you here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of kind of the older employees. You might drop it to the 45 also, I know that. But you have 8 of them, and look at those 8 people, 7 of the 8 got laid off. So that would be an argument that, wow, you know what? If you did that randomly, I don't think that could happen. Could it happen? One of the things we're going to talk about a lot in this class is in randomness, pretty much anything can happen for sure. Like I could roll a dice and I could get, 12 12s in a row. Pretty darn unlikely. You'd never bet on it. But randomness is randomness, so anything can happen. But we're looking at like what probably would we expect? Would we expect the 7 oldest people or 7 of the 8 oldest people to get laid off if we did it randomly? And I would say no. Now we could go one step further and do what's called a simulation. You could put the names of these people in a hat or the ages of the people in a hat. I guess the ages are, like 52, 53, 54, 53, 53, 53, 54, 58, 64. I know those numbers. In the chart, we could go back and look at them. So you could just put those 8 numbers in a hat, and you could pick out, you could put all these numbers in a hat, not just those 8, and just pick out and see how many of those at that age got laid off. So there's different ways that we can do simulation. So this chapter is this section, we'll dig a little bit more in section 2, but this section right now is just to look at some charts, analyze, just kind of come up with your opinion and get used to writing. The writing and the explaining is a pretty important tool. There's all kinds, you see I got all kinds of, you can look at charts this way. Okay, these are now salaried employees. Now we got whether they got laid off, yes, no. Okay, laid off. For salaried employees. And then one of the things about this one is you can talk about in age discrimination, 40 is kind of an important age. That's actually considered old. Don't tell me that, I hope so. But there's lots of other ways you can look at this. So all these charts are in your book. So they're going to, basically the idea here is the homework's just going to have you looking at things in books. By the way, sorry, this is total. I should have said that in case you're having a hard time reading that. So this is basically whether they're over 40. So this is over 40, under 40. Sorry about that. And then whether or not they got laid off or not. So notice that the over 40, 4 of 9 got laid off, and the under 40, 14 of 27 got laid off. So you could look at things that way. So it's really just opinion for now. Just be able to justify your answer. Say, look, I don't think there's age discrimination here because the percents are more for under 40. You can say things like that. Whatever you see in the chart, that is, just start looking at the charts, looking at the things, and see what you can do from there. We'll talk a little bit more tomorrow in section 1.2 about the math behind some of this. Please let me know if you have any questions.